Hi, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Jessie.
And this is Becoming.
And we want to talk a little bit today about spirituality. We really believe that we are body, soul, and spirit, and that it's so important to be nourishing all three of those areas of our lives, especially in times of challenge. And so, even though it's usually quite a personal thing, we just thought we'll have a chat about some of the spiritual practices that have really helped us, particularly in the last few months.
And I suppose just to give a bit of context to this conversation, when we talk about spirituality in our spiritual lives, we're not so much talking about our journey with our inner self, and more so about our journey with connection to the divine, connection with God, and what that looks like for us.
Yeah.
So Jessie, for you in this season, what has spiritual life looked like? Has it looked different to other seasons? Do you want to just open it up for us and let us know?
Yeah, so it's been a really interesting season for me because not only has it been our COVID pandemic that we've all been in, but I've been finishing off a master's as well, which has meant doing a dissertation, which by the way has probably been the most challenging thing I've ever done.
We're both stressed from Jessie's thesis.
Police has had me on the phone in tears multiple times in the last few months.
But it's done, all in. How many thousand words?
12,000 words, all finished. We're really thrilled. But I think what happened for me was that I had to draw on God and draw on spirituality in a different way in the season because it was just so difficult. I genuinely wasn't sure I was going to be able to overcome, and I needed to draw on God in a way that I could see that He was going to be with me in it, that He was going to be strength to me in it, that He was going to help me actually get to the other side. And so that was amazing. And I suppose part of how I did that was I've always been a huge fan of a morning routine, actually taking time every morning, no matter how I feel, to just connect with God.
You're quite structured.
Yes.
You're good with structure.
Yeah, and structure that's very much my personality, so I get that wouldn't necessarily work for everybody, but for me, structure and routine is really important. So I would always take that time, but I did need more than that in this season, and one of the things that really helped me was to kind of tap into the idea of that God is present in every single person and in every single story. And if we have a look at biographies, or I watched some amazing movies over the last couple of months of people that have just really changed the world. They've done phenomenal things, they've overcome huge challenge, and watching those stories and watching people get inspired and move through things was incredibly inspirational for me. And I think inspiration is connected to God. I think that He's actually the source of inspiration, and one of the most beautiful places that we can find that is in other people. And I suppose as well, like once I kind of got that idea, I suddenly thought inspiration is really helping me. When I feel inspired, I feel more empowered, I feel more able to overcome, I feel more creative. I could I was just so connected to hope for how I would move through something. I realized you can find inspiration in so many different places. So not only in other people's stories, but in watching people be creative, or in connecting to learning. I think I was telling you that one of the most amazing people in my life is my grandmother, and what I find so inspiring about her is that she's always learning new things. She never gives up on life. There's something about connecting to learning that says, I'm still here, I still want to learn, I don't know everything, but I can keep getting through.
You have to tell the story about your granny on Zoom.
Oh, she's 95 years old, absolutely phenomenal woman, and over lockdown she has learned how to use Zoom, and her favourite thing about lockdown was that she could connect to family on birthdays. So I think all of those have been really important for me in terms of connecting to God at this time, is to connecting to that part of Him that inspires me and that is so present in other people.
So it sounds like then in this season there was a lot of anxiety, obviously, with the thesis. There was a lot of external factors with COVID and all the crazy things happening in the world, that your spiritual season had to shift a little bit in line with that for you to feel connected.
Yes, exactly. It did have to. What worked before didn't work in the season, and I actually had to find a way outside of my own head into other people's stories and connect to God in a different way. And that was so helpful. I felt Him really close to me and actually able to, that gave me the strength that I needed to be able to move through.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that flexibility to be able to shift and change, and it not being kind of really religious or structured, that it actually gets to move as life moves. And
absolutely, and relationship with God is a relationship. It shifts.
Yeah.
It doesn't look the same in every season. And I think being flexible is a really important part of that.
Yeah.
And I think you'll touch on some of that in the keys that you found in the last season.
Yeah, I think for me, there's one of the main keys for me in terms of my spiritual life is what I call, it's unusual language, but I call it keeping my heart clean. And what I mean by that is barriers to my spiritual connection with God. So things like if I'm offended with somebody, or if I'm carrying unforgiveness, or if I'm bitter, a massive block for me is if I'm disappointed. So if I feel life has let me down, or I'm not where I should be, or God's not coming through the way I expect him to come through, disappointment can really block me from connecting from God. So that stuff I try to keep a really short account with. So I'll really quickly try to work through that, and that takes sometimes a lot of tears, sometimes just bringing it to God, just talking through it, but having that space where I can acknowledge this is happening and it's hard, but I want to move through. And I find often when I do that in a spiritual connection way, now I do that emotionally as well with friends and all of that, but when I do it spiritually with God, I find there is kind of like a divine exchange that happens. So you get hope in the place of disappointment in a way that I can't muster up myself. And I'm really thankful for that, because it kind of lessens the amount of hard work that you have to do.
Yeah, it's trusting God for his part.
Exactly, yeah. So you do your piece, but he really meets you halfway in that. And that's probably, for me, one of the most encouraging things about my spiritual life is him being able to do that exchange with me. So I try to do that as often as possible, and to recognise stuff as quickly as it comes up, to kind of sort that piece out. Another piece for me then is just connection with God. So what does my prayer life look like? I'm not great on like getting down on my knees and just praying endlessly. I know there's people that can do that. I can't. I get bored, I get distracted, my mind goes 100 places. So I have to do something that I enjoy. So for me, it's usually a prayer walk. I'll usually get out into the park, I'll do a walk, and I'll pray on that walk. There's times I'll do that at home, obviously, weather depending in Ireland. But I like to get out and do that. And usually the first part of that will look like me just bringing God my day and talking to him about friends or family or difficulties. And then I'll kind of get to a point of peace with that. And once I start feeling that peace, that's when I'll start just kind of connecting more for the sake of, like you said, relationship, rather than needing him to answer something in a certain way.
Isn't it amazing how we need to remember that God actually likes doing the things that we like?
Yes.
I don't know where, we so often think, oh, it's quite, we have to sit and be on our knees, but he likes the things that we enjoy.
Yeah, and that he created them. He created us to enjoy life and, to connect with him in an enjoyable way. And when I remember that, it takes a lot of the stress out. Because sometimes even spiritual life can be stressful. You're like,
exactly.
I feel disconnected, I'm not sure, and you start blaming yourself for it, rather than...
Should I be doing more and praying more, sitting still more?
Yeah. So just relaxing with some of that, and just finding peace in your centre again, and actually being able to connect from that place. But
it's huge.
It's been huge, but it's been so encouraging and helpful in this season to have a spiritual life and to feel connected to God. I think especially when there's so much happening in the world, there's actually something very peaceful about being able to find that place of connection with the divine. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
And what comes up time and time again, when we're discussing our spiritual lives with each other, is that it looks different for everybody, and it looks different in different seasons. And so whatever that looks like for you, we just want to encourage you today to connect to your spiritual side, to go and do something fun and invite God into that, and to connect to that peace and that hope and that strength that he's able to bring.
Yeah, and not to be afraid of the questions.
Yes.
Like, there's lots of questions that come up on your spiritual journey all the time, and I might feel like I'm clear on what I believe in a certain area, and then that shifts and that changes, and being able to move with that but yet stay solid in the journey of actually developing a spiritual life and a connection to God. So I think being okay with that. Like, we don't have answers for loads of the questions from that 2020 has brought up and that a global pandemic has brought up, but it's being okay with some of that. We're not actually meant to have all the answers right now, and yet we can still have connection with God in the midst of the uncertainty. And
the connection is often the gift in that.
Absolutely, yeah. So thank you for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed our informal chat into our spiritual lives and just opening up a little bit about what our connection with God looks like. And we really hope that journey goes well for you in whatever way it looks.